This is one of my favorite tools and canvases and tips and tricks that I use in all sorts of ways. In fact, only a couple of weeks ago, it was just working with two people to start to unlock a problem and to really get clear on their why. It's called a root cause canvas, and it's part of our understanding a problem on our way to a solution. This is what the root cause canvas looks like. So I want you to imagine this as a really ugly tree. You know, one of those ones where the roots are kind of creeping into the sewer system and it's about to cause a lot of problems to your house, so you really want to get it under control. It's one that might be decaying a little bit inside and it's a little bit dangerous. So don't think that we're cutting down perfectly good native trees. This is one that we absolutely not want to chop around and prune, we want to get rid of it. Now, if we're going to be working in a really big group with a root cause tree, again, I would say get this up as big as you possibly can around a wall. This is probably something that we want some really good focus time on with as many people as possible. Again, you will know your groups better than I do, but there needs to be a lot of trust here. And what we want to make sure that everybody is aware of is that we want to be kind of wearing that black hat. This is something that we are absolutely dedicated to, solving a problem that we've identified. So we need to make sure that we go really hard on the problem and really soft on the people who are trying to solve that problem and who are helping us in our process. So if it's nice and big, we've got lots of people around that, perhaps we've got lots of stations, just like we did if you've watched our Empathy Canvas video as well. If we're working in a smaller group or a mid-sized group here, it's really nice to have this projected up on the board, and again, we want this as big as possible and to have a scribe as well. We tend to put that problem in the middle of the trunk of the tree and let people go a little bit crazy. You can get people to work in groups of 2 or 3 here as well. Again, just making sure that we go through the process step by step. All right. So I'm going to show you what this process looks like as we tangibly do this and walk you through this canvas a little bit more so that you're equipped to go ahead and do this. One caveat that I'm going to give you, if you are putting this on a wall, make sure that you take it down after. This root cause tree only makes sense to those who are involved in the process of actually putting it together. If they come in, somebody comes in from the outside and reads your root cause tree, it can cause a lot of stress and a lot of troubles. As proud as you will be of the output of the root cause tree, it really is for your eyes only and not something just to have on a wall exposed to people who weren't part of the process of putting it together. Trust me on that one. All right, let me step you through it a little bit more. So we've got the root cause tree up, as you can see. Above the line here, we've got consequences, and below the line we have causes. What we want to imagine, the trunk of the tree, that's the problem that you're trying to understand or solve. That's what's holding up the tree, and we want to make sure that we are really tough and we are killing it. Now the consequences, think about those as the branches. This is what we ask, and then what happens if, and then what happens if. It's and then are the kinds of questions that we're asking about the consequences. So first up, put your problem in the trunk of the tree. Might be something like, the problem is that students don't like coming to school. Now we know that not all students don't like coming to school, but we're going to get really tough on the problem and assume that this is a universal case. And we would ask ourselves, and then what happens? Well, and then a lot of students fall behind and they're not achieving their potential. And then what happens? They become really disengaged, and then they might actually become complete school refusers. And then what happens? Well, perhaps then they have problems getting employed. And then what happens? Perhaps in order to supplement their income, they might get into a life of crime. And then what happens? Then they end up landing in jail. And then what happens? We don't need to go too much further down the consequences to know it can be pretty dire there. But let's follow another branch along and say the problem is that students don't like coming to school. And then what happens? Well, then our parents start to complain and maybe withdraw students. And then what happens? Well, there's a reduced need for teaching staff, so there's a lot of redundancies. And then what happens? Well, and then the surrounding community, is really starting to fall apart because we don't have students that are actively engaged in learning. We've got high unemployment in the area as well. And obviously we don't have a quality school where kids are going to because we don't have the resources that are given into the school as a result of falling numbers. And then what happens? The school finally closes, people are moving out of the area. We then get some pretty bad social situations happening in local communities. So what we're seeing with the consequences here is that they can be pretty dire. The consequences are important because often if we can't identify consequences, it's not a problem, it's just a sook or a whinge. So if somebody's coming to you and saying, this is a problem we need to solve urgently in our school or in our workplace, it's great to whip out your root cause canvas tree and to then have a look at, is this actually a problem or is this just something that's a little bit of a sook that we can really quickly fix straight away? We don't want to focus too much on the consequences, as bad as they are, because in fact there's always something that is underpinning those. And this is where we get down to the roots of the tree. So let's have a look at how this works. Now if we go down where that soil is and below, this is often the stuff that we can't see. These are the causes of the problem, or you could say, this is kind of the foundations of what's keeping this really ugly tree alive. Rather than asking and then, with our root causes, we ask why, as many times as possible. You might remember from an earlier video, we had our 5 whys canvas. It's a really good thing to be able to ask why as many times as possible to try and get to the heart of what the problem is or at the heart of what motivates someone. So again, if we look at our problem here, the problem is that students don't like coming to school. Why? Well, because the grounds are a little bit dilapidated and classrooms are unclean. Why? Because we're really busy and actually we had to put resources towards other things other than maintenance. Why? Well, behaviour was a real issue and we were starting to get too many maintenance requests than we could actually service, and so our maintenance team were overwhelmed. You can have a little bit of an aha moment there. Might be something along the lines of not respect for property. Again, let's go along the lines of the problem is students don't like coming to school. Why? Because maybe staff are a little bit snappy. Why? Well, there's been lots of curriculum changes across the school over the past 5 years and staff feel burnt out. Why? Because we haven't had proper training or induction into new methods and ways of doing things. Aha, perhaps if we worked on the welfare of our staff, then perhaps they might serve our students better and perhaps they might come to school. All right, you can see that that's a little bit oof and a little bit hard in our guts. What we're doing here is not laying blame at all. We really need to park our judgment and our blame here. And in fact, we might say, look, that might not be the issue here, but it's one worth exploring. The big thing here is that teaching, leading, being in teams, leading organisations is hard yakka. And if we can get to the heart of the problem in saying, well, it's not actually something that we thought it was, perhaps the root cause of the problem is something that we were just kind of shoving under the carpet for a while. Now is the time, once it's exposed, to say, well, what can we do about it collectively? The big thing here is we name it, we own it, we deal with it, and we're better together. You can quickly see why we don't want this root cause tree up and around without the knowledge of people who were part of the process here. It's a means to an end. It's not an output all on its own. Spend some time here really looking at the root causes and asking why, and importantly, parking your judgment or blame. We're more interested in solving the problem here. We need to go soft on people and hard on the issue that we're trying to solve. Go easy and have fun with this one. And of course, if you need any help, you can always get in touch with us and we're more than happy to facilitate this for you.